Hey, welcome to the Making of an Exception podcast. My name is Kirk Graham, and today we've got a special guest. His name is Bryce Ferrell. What's up, Bryce? Thanks for being here.
What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Yes, Bryce is a hero of mine. I say it like genuine, meaning that we're not best friends, but I've been able to see you live your life and build your business kind of from a distance through some of the people that work for you. And everything that I've ever heard about you and every interaction that I've had about you is like, there's so much of who you are that I want to be like, genuinely. And so even just watching from a distance, I appreciate it. But Bryce owns 10th floor properties. 10th floor, what do you call it?
Property management, brokerage group.
Yeah. So 10th floor, you're a property manager. You're taking care of a ton of buildings, mostly in Minneapolis, Minneapolis area, uptown specifically. So you own a bunch of buildings, you manage a bunch of properties, and you're going to explain a little bit more of what you're doing. That's a terrible introduction, but
good.
But it's also a world that I don't really understand completely, like a little bit, but. You got into the property management business when you were young, and now you built your own company, which is like successful. I always tell people when I'm introducing, like I'm saying, oh yeah, Bryce, because you're helping me buy a house right now. But when I tell people about you, I'm like, yeah, he owns half of Uptown. So you would be like, don't say that. But
a little exaggeration, but it's a good goal.
But Uptown is kind of your spot, and that's where your office is. But tell us a little bit more about what 10th floor is and all like the different arms of real estate that you guys are working
for sure. 10th floor is a property management company. So I started doing property management 2002 through another gentleman. Did some condo conversions with him, learned the property management game, brought me in at a young age with no experience. Excuse me. And, it's a lot of leasing, organization, problem solving. So when you have an issue in your apartment, you call us, right? Renewing leases and just leasing vacant space out. So I have 3-4 staff members that work for us, controller, 3 other leasing agents. Have properties from the U of M, uptown, just starting kind of into downtown Minneapolis. And then some way down in Farmington. Then we do have a brokerage side, which is typically multifamily. We're helping you with your house, but our main focus is multifamily real estate. So it's not something we heavily focus on, but I think internally I'm always looking to buy. So we have Ethan, one of the staff members, kind of put him in place. Dave Roppy, another guy who works kind of with/for, that's in place. That's cold calling on properties. Charlie Hornig, cold calling on properties, and then can bring them out to a third party or first to us and say, hey, Bryce, you're interested in buying? Yeah. So
10th floor, you own a bunch of buildings, multifamily, or not multifamily. Is that what it's called? Apartments?
Yeah.
So you own a bunch of apartment buildings, but also you manage for other people that own buildings.
Right.
So it's like, do you know how many units you have?
Yeah, so I have 15 buildings that I personally own, and overall we manage 750 units. So Joel told me it's right around 90 to 100 buildings in total. We're a little unique. A lot of the management companies... With 4 people. A lot of the... it's efficiently ran, we'll put it that way. But a lot of the apartment companies in the suburbs will run a 500 unit, a 250 unit, a 100 unit building. Our niche has always kind of been that 20 units, 25 units and under. We do have a 105 unit building in Bloomington. But the majority of our product is smaller.
Well, some of those buildings have 100 units.
But
you're talking 90 to 100 buildings that you look after.
Right. Yep.
I mean, the phone has got to be ringing all the time. I mean, like it's insane.
It started with cell phones, and that's slowly fading away. So, you're waking up at 2 a.m. Getting calls here and there. Now we have a maintenance staff that's in place. So we have 3 full-time maintenance guys, 1 roving guy who's a 1099 guy.
So now you're not doing the midnight calls.
Right. So we're not getting the midnight calls. It rolls right to those maintenance guys, which is huge. I mean, we always are that kind of third tier within it. If you can't get the maintenance guy right away, if it doesn't hit the second maintenance guy, it hits, myself, Joel, Ethan, depending on what property.
And you're mid-30s right now, and you've built
Say late 30s.
Late 30s. Okay.
Yeah.
Multi million. Like, I mean, this is a big business that you've built and it's been, how many years have you been building it? When did 10th Floor start?
I would say 2010, 11, right in there.
Yeah.
And we're a small player. I mean, to be kind of humble with it.
You're talking 8 or 9 years.
Right.
Like from nothing before.
Yeah. And this started, I mean, you have to go back to, 2001, 2002. There was a gentleman, Clark Gasson, who's a large developer.
Yeah.
In Minneapolis, did the Walkway building, the Edgewater, Flowco Fusion on the U of M campus, is down at the Riverwalk.
Do you manage all these
Rochester.
now?
No, so I managed his Uptown portfolio. He has his own staff, but it's unique because he has a management company.
Yeah.
So there's no need to third party us out, and he chooses to.
Yeah.
But he gave me a shot. I had told you, prior to the podcast.
Yeah.
I called him for a year
How
straight.
old were you?
19, 20 at the
So
time.
you just wrapped up high school, and
Working in mortgage banking.
so that's what you thought you were going to do. You're going to be a mortgage broker.
Yeah, I mean, no, but it was an opportunity,
Yeah.
right? I was a D student. You just struggled with dyslexia, reading, different things like that.
Yo, I
And
can't wait to talk about it.
I didn't have an opportunity. This was an opportunity. It got me in. And while I sat there and did mortgage banking, I continued to add to my goal book, continued to just stand on scriptures and read through confessions. And when there was an income coming in and you were frustrated, you'd go back to that goal book. And Clark walked in one day and to meet with the owner, this Sherry Martin, who was a huge influence, young, business-wise in my life, along with this Pat Shaw who worked there, who was awesome. But Clark came in one day in a beat-up Iowa Hawkeye T-shirt, half tucked into his jeans, super charismatic, and there was something different about him. And finding out a few years.
I love that his sweatshirt was half tucked into his jeans.
Yeah, just it was Clark. You have to know Clark. And finding out years later that he just was drawn to me because he felt like there was something different about me. Whatever it was. I believe it was the favor of God on my side.
Yeah, because your perspective is you are D student, dyslexic, not qualified for any level of like big business or to run a company or anything like that. And this guy says there's something different on you.
Right.
What is
so I had called him, on and off for a year. I mean, once a week, every other week type of a thing. His dad owned, one of the largest management companies in the Midwest for associations. So condominium management, we manage apartment buildings, so separate businesses. But Clark, always seeing markets, always forward thinking, like kind of before things are happening. Bought, I think, a 6-unit. He'd probably correct that, but I think it was a 6-unit in Linden Hills in Minneapolis, and turned it into condominiums. Like no one was doing that. No one had done it since the 80s. So
turning townhomes or apartments into condos?
Turned apartments. So when you have an apartment building, you have one PID like your house. So a property identification number. One apartment building has the same thing. But if you have 6 units in there and can create 6 property identification numbers, now you have 6 homes, right? 6 single family places to sell or multifamily places to sell, condominium. So he turned those into condos. I don't know. I think he made him and his business partner 180 grand, so like 90 grand each. And I think he realized at that time, I have something. I don't remember how much he owned prior to that. I remember he couldn't, was having a hard time making his car payment on the car he drove. And
so when you met him, he was just starting.
Just starting. I mean, came out of college, worked for his dad. I'm probably butchering his story a little bit, but for like 35 grand a year. And, he's a graduate of the University of Iowa, Big Ten school. His buddies are going to the stock exchange. His buddies are working in downtown Chicago. And Clark's like, are you kidding me? You're paying me 35 grand a year. But learned, and I think is humble enough to sit and understand what he was getting, and then broke out on his own. So I caught him kind of as he's breaking out on his own.
So why would you call him for a year though? If it's like, did you have a sense of like, I think this guy's somebody to follow, or did you just liked him?
Yeah.
Or
well, so Sherry I worked for said, hey, if he's turning apartments into condominiums, you have the ability to sit in those with the real estate agent selling them and become the mortgage guy. Right. So there was a tie-in with the current business. But in talking to him, that's not anything he was really entertaining. And I didn't really enjoy what I was doing at the time, and, as I called him, his big thing was, look, I don't have money to pay you. I can't afford an assistant. I can't afford someone. And I was like, I'll file paperwork. I'll do whatever you need me to do.
So
I'll trail you, right?
You're saying I'll just volunteer for you.
Yeah. And it became, after about 6 months, that's what it became. Like, all right, I'll volunteer for you. I'll do whatever for free. 6 months later, so 12 months kind of into this harassment.
Yeah.
Finally, he's like, dude. And he always says, dude, you're frustrating me. And says, meet me at Perkins in Golden Valley. Meet me at Perkins at 4:30. And I was like, tomorrow afternoon? He's like, dude, tomorrow morning.
4:30 in the morning.
Met him at 4:30 in the morning. And at that time, I think maybe I'm 21, 22, had been married 3 years.
Is he doing a breakfast at 4:30, or is he doing like a chicken tender melt?
Yeah, at that time, I think he was doing coffee to wake himself up. Nice. So I walked in there. I'd been married at that time 2-3 years. We got married young, and have maybe a 6-month-old at the time.
Yep.
Have a house payment. Built a house out of high school, which is another story, but was a blessing. And so, I have responsibility. Not that he doesn't, but here's a single guy like trying to start a business, and
you've got a wife and a kid in the house.
Wife and a kid. I literally have 15 grand to my name, right? My house payment's $1,080 a month. Like we have this all dialed down. My wife thinks I'm working at the mortgage company. I'm sitting with some crazy guy at 4:30 in the morning at a Perkins.
Yep.
And I brought a yellow pad, which impressed him, I guess. But had a yellow pad with me and had one question on there, and it just said why. I didn't want him to see it, so it was folded over.
No.
So he looks at me. He's like, dude, why do you keep calling me? And I said, well, that's funny because my question is, why do you keep answering the phone? Like, why would you even entertain this?
Yeah.
And he's like, if you want to come in Saturdays, Saturdays turn to 6 a.m. to noon, 6 a.m. to noon within, I think, 2 months, a month, turned into a full-time job. Now, I use the word job lightly because it was a full-time job that I wasn't getting paid for.
Right.
Then some things happened with one of his condo conversions that started taking off where they fired the project manager that they had.
Yep.
And put me in that position. Where he didn't even want me. One of his main investors wanted me. But I think Clark trusted me, and I think he continued to put things into me, which was the key. And I stepped into that role, and it worked out. And 6 months later, they handed me my first paycheck. And I remember when the investor handed me the check. I'm wearing a backpack and kind of baggy dress clothes. I can't really afford what I'm supposed to be dressed like, and handed me the check. And
I can't afford what I'm supposed to be dressed like. I love it.
So I take my backpack off and stick my check in there, or thank you card is what I thought it was. And he's like, open it up. And I opened it up, and there's a check. And, I see this check, and I'm like, dang. And he takes it back from me. And, immediately you're like, and he goes, hey, anybody can make money, but few people can produce wealth. He always called me kid. So he's like, kid, anybody can make money, few people can produce wealth.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't be stupid, and handed it back to me. And put it in there. And like that hit me because my mother-in-law, future mother-in-law at the time, at a young age, had kind of said that to me. Sherry had said that to me. Yeah. Moving forward, people have said that. So it's funny to kind of continue to get that little thing.
Anybody can make money. Few people can produce wealth.
And I think, when you start talking real estate, and we've talked before, when you go to a job, you have income. And when you own something beyond your job that produces income, you have passive income, right? Yeah. So what builds the wealth that creates a passive income that can be life-sustaining compared to a job that the second I stop working at, whether I'm 30 or 70, the income's gone.
Another job. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what you built. You built for your family a bunch of passive income. You could retire tomorrow and you're good. Well, I mean, not that you want to.
In theory, you're right.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. How did you get into to do the mortgage thing? Like, where did real estate come from? Did somebody say, hey, you're not very good at school, so this is a good thing to go into? Like, are people that are listening, they're going, I feel like I feel similar. I identify, should I be a real estate agent?
Yeah. So I was a teacher aide for the athletic director. And there always wasn't a ton of stuff to do. So I would go down to the kindergarten class.
In high school?
In high school,
yeah.
And I was K through 12. I went to a small private school. So would go down to this kindergarten class and help out. And that teacher was funded by the owner of the mortgage company. So they had people who would donate to each class. Was funded by the owner of that mortgage company, and then her husband actually worked for the owner of that mortgage company.
Got it.
That's the Pat Shaw and the Sherry Martin that I spoke of. So, you know, the teacher was a big influence during school. It was very encouraging, would come to my baseball games, was just somebody I felt comfortable with. Again, along with like your influence, my mother-in-law, future mother-in-law at the time, like speaking into my life. And I think you surround yourself with people that can, you know, that can then add to your life, whether you realize it or not. I mean, I think that's where you feel led by the Spirit, kind of who to surround yourself with. And, you know, out of high school, they essentially offered me a job, and, you know, started there, and the rest was history.
You were telling me about your mother-in-law. There's a moment in your life that she was like, hey, are you gonna be part of this family? Whatever, you're dating her daughter. And then she said, what are the goals you have for your life? Tell that story, because you had never really set goals for your life or thought that way. But it has impacted you, obviously.
For sure. So I'm at their house probably 5th, 6th time, you know, and again, my freshman year, their 8th grade year.
So you're
school.
15.
I'm 15 years old, right? I remember distinctly sitting at their kitchen table. The house smells like potpourri. It's 4 girls in this house, so it's chaos at all times. You know, the dad's making spaghetti at the counter, who's not acknowledging me on my 6th time, you know, in the house, because he doesn't want me talking to his daughter. But, you know, the crazy mother-in-law, the positive mother-in-law, the encouraging mother-in-law, you know, said, hey, you know, do you think you're going to be a part of this family? Are you coming over here a lot more? And I was like, I don't 14. know. Right. Like, this is crazy. I have no clue. And she's like, and I said, I think so. I mean, I guess. And she's like, all right, well, if you want to be a part of our family, you need to set goals for your life. Walks out of the kitchen, comes back in with a notepad and a pen. And inevitably from that point, you know, spent the next 10 years with me, but especially through high school, just drilling in conversation, right? This wasn't someone who at times would preach at you or would be upset, but I think was someone who genuinely was drawn to me and genuinely felt led to be a part of my life, and genuinely felt led to pray things out for me. As I think my mom did foundationally as a child. And then I think, you know, what better, you have kids, I have kids, what better thing could happen in your kid's life than another person come in and pick up, you know, where you are with your child and encourage them to a totally different level. And I think my mother-in-law came in and, you know, had us, you know, by the time I was 18 years old, I had a 3-ring binder, which I still keep next to my bed and take to work with me. But a 3-ring binder from, you know, pictures of $1 million homes on Lake Minnetonka to stuff out in Montana to what I wanted my kids to look like, be like, you know, I mean, a couple little things in there, like I bind the spirit of mediocrity for my children. You know, my children understand that they can do all things through Christ who strengthens them. Greater is He, you know, so taking scriptures with thoughts, right?
Now, how old are your kids?
So I have 16, 13, and 11.
Yeah, so 3 kids, and they're old enough to potentially be walking in those things that you wrote down a long time ago.
So my 13-year-old is a big goal setter herself. But you see things. I mean, there's times definitely that I'm frustrated, and I sat down and we go to an alternative medicine doctor. And I was talking to her, and
which is like natural,
like herbs and stuff like that, as opposed to pills, right? So while she's giving me my garlic pill or whatever it may be for that month, it was like, hey, your stress levels are high, and you just got to calm down. And I don't know whether she's saved or not. I kind of feel like she is, but she said, hey, you got to learn to cast your cares. Like, doesn't the Bible say that? It kind of smiles, and I walk out, and I was like, was that real? And did that just happen? And so, you know, with my 16-year-old, it just stresses me out. My wife at times stresses me out, business. And so like the last 2 months have been really focused on just kind of
casting,
literally visualizing it, wadding it to tossing it up. He catches it and try to release it. So
you were saying your daughter is a goal setter. Like what are your kids like, and how have you tried to like intentionally, just in raising them up? Do you want them to take over this business? Are you going to gift it to them? Is it like a legacy thing? You're going to send them to college? How are you raising them up?
Yeah. So I think, you have 3 different personalities. So I have the 16-year-old is very genuine, very sensitive, caring, competitive, but self-analyzes in a positive and negative way, and probably lacks self-confidence in a way. I think some of that comes from a type A dad. And I think when you have kids a kid at 21 years old, you're immature at 25, 26, 27, parenting that kid. And I think there's things that I would change or things that I would have done differently. But I think that you look back and go, okay, I mean, I can't do anything about it, so we're going to pray it out, and he's going to grow from it. It was what it was. So, he has now kind of hit his stride where he's like, this is what I'm pressing for. This is what I'm going to become. I walked in his bathroom the other day, making sure it was clean with 2 boys sharing a bathroom. And he's got scriptures on his mirror and confessions from the height he wants to be. And it's like, I'm 6'5" in the name of Jesus. I throw 95 plus miles an hour. He's lefty, so he wants to pitch. But so his goal is all-state high school baseball player, all-American collegiate baseball player, a perennial Major League All-Star. So now we also have conversation with him that there's a bigger picture, right? And he was at a facility in Edina working out the other day, and a guy comes up to him, and AAA player from Milwaukee, and said, hey, what are we doing? Where are we going with this? What are you seeing? And Caden's like, this with my swing. And he's like, let me help you, and just helped us. And I just said, hey, I heard you played. Where'd you play? And went through his whole story. The key to his whole story wasn't how he got there. And I was explaining this we got in the car, and I said, Caden, what'd you learn? And the next morning, I said, what did you learn from whatever his name was, who talked to us? And he's like, well, hard work pays off. He was a 34th round draft pick, got a $2,000 signing bonus. So he was a penny stock. He made it to AAA. Like, he's a high A-ball guy that never goes anywhere else. And he said, well, he honed his craft. He told us, because he was a catcher, he could throw guys out, and that was the key. I said, no. What he told us was his biggest mistake was he focused so much on baseball, and he had no other vision for his life, and he literally used the word vision, that now he's 28 years old, 27 years old, and he's confused what he's doing. And so I was like, there's a bigger picture to all this. And the bigger picture is what's that? Because at 45, baseball's done. At 22, baseball's done. At 18, baseball's done. At some point, there's an ending to it, right? So what's that next step look like? So I think he likes finance economics. My daughter is, like I said, a huge goal setter. And I was telling you the story about the goats. So she is someone who visualizes and obsesses, and I think, is able to really dive into her vision and dive into a prayer life. I think, certain people that can kind of, really process things mentally and almost get lost in their own thoughts can be very dangerous, and and curved properly, you'll be very, very successful. So, she was dreaming about goats one day and comes down the steps all happy, joy. It's like we're getting goats. We're getting goats because I saw them in the backyard because they were jumping on me, and my boys aren't like that, but that doesn't mean that, they don't have their own way. My little one is, tough and cries a lot, sensitive.
How old? 11?
Caring. He's 11. But he is extremely intelligent, has a very sensitive spirit. And he'll make some waves too. So
it's awesome. And I've loved even just getting a glimpse in how you guys have, are parenting your kids, and even like the scriptures on the mirror and the stuff like that. It's like, I hope I have a 4-year-old, but and a 6-month-old. I hope that they grow up with that same level of this is we believe this stuff, we're following Jesus. And power the way we think, power the way we speak, all of that. And so you guys, it's awesome to see not only you building strong business, but also building strong kids, that'll go off and do, I'm sure great things, all 3 of them. I was thinking about your, the story of your mother-in-law and thinking it's powerful her coming into your life to help you set goals and all, it's kind of this epic story of this new, what you were saying is an outside voice from your family taking you a little bit further. And I think about it Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that book you would,
great book.
Where the guy's my dad's great, but he's actually the poor dad in the story, because he has his friend's dad who's this successful guy and teaches him how to build wealth and all this stuff. And it's like your mother-in-law's that. The story's cool, but you almost assume does that mean you don't have a great upbringing or great parents or great and so talk about, because you actually do. You have great a great family and a great foundation. What were your parents like, and what was growing up for you in your home?
Yep. So I was raised in a Christian home, praying mom. But I did 2 sides to being raised, in the sense that I had a mom, kind of a Midwestern house mom, right? Take you to little daycare in the morning, go to work, pick you up after. My dad drove truck and worked the second shift, I think you would call it. So 3 to 3, something like that, 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. So we didn't see him a whole ton until the weekends.
So you grew up not seeing your dad throughout the week for the most part.
Correct. Yeah.
And the weekends, and that was normal to you.
That was totally normal.
Yeah.
So my dad did retire when I was in high school, so I got that time with him and after. I mean, but my mom grew up in a Christian home. My dad grew up with 10 siblings. His dad was actually in World War I, believe it or not. So he was born in 1894.
So he's young on the end of 10 kids.
Yeah, so he's, I think, the third youngest. Very spread out family.
Yeah.
My oldest uncle was the age of my mom's dad, as like an example of where it was. I think my grandparents, who I never met, they'd passed before I was born, but I think they were 11 or 13 years apart in age, so that obviously helped with that too. But a couple down the street took him to church. Him and the three younger, so those three young siblings.
Do you know how old he was?
Well, my uncle above my dad actually had walking pneumonia at 18 months old, 21 months old, and went deaf. So this is 1944. So my dad is 6 months old. And I think those last three kids were kind of left in a sense to somewhat fend for themselves. So I think there was, maybe it'd be interesting to talk to my dad, who's since passed away, but if there was bitterness, frustration, if that shaped him in a positive way, a negative way, I mean, I'm sure all of the above, right? But a couple down the street, maybe 3, 4, 5 years old, took them to Sunday school class. And again, I know their home was a Christian home. I don't know to what level or to what involvement. My mom's was a strong Baptist family. So we grew up with a praying mom, and I think that's the key. I think my mom would throw us in this rocking chair and pray. And I've never even talked to my sister about it, but I remember sitting in this, now what I think is like this gross texture.
She'd just sit and hold you.
Just sit and hold us and pray. And it would be a 5-minute prayer of kind of our family and my dad coming home safe to, 15 minutes. And sometimes you would be carried to bed because it had gone on for an hour. And she'd be praying about people. She was an RN in Robbinsdale at North Memorial. And, would be praying for patients and other family members and people at work. And so I think one thing she had said to me that I thought was really interesting is she talked about prayer as a farmer hoeing a field. And when the farmer comes back to that field in the spring, the ground's rock hard. And when you pray, you're plowing that field and hoeing that field, right? When your next generation comes behind you, that field, you start here, not here, right? And so I think there was a foundation laid, I remember being 8, 9 years old in the small church I went to. Missionaries came from Haiti and just talked about lack of water, lack of food. And I remember 20 minutes as a 10, 12-year-old by myself on my floor, just praying for these people in Haiti. It just hit me. So I think the influence my mom had, little things like that, just feeling led to pray and feeling comfort in prayer. And I think, maybe not being a great student, not being the most intelligent, I relied on that subconsciously. And then I think having my mother-in-law, come in at a later age in high school where, think of the influences of high school. And I think, people sacrifice to be successful, right? So, there was times you sacrificed friendships, not really realizing it, but knowing that they maybe weren't the best influence, even though it was the cool thing to do to go hang with them. I think, maybe even to a fault, my mother-in-law, potentially sacrificed time with her kids or time in her marriage to influence my life, which is an amazing thing, she's a great relationship with her kids and great relationship with her husband. I don't want to confuse that, but I think at that period of time, she understood what she felt led to do and where she felt like her time needed to go and put that influence in me. So
the influence of prayer, even as you built business and raising a family, that's impacted you. Your dad being a trucker, but also you said before this that he fought in Vietnam. What type of dad was he? What characteristics do you have in your life that you've pulled from your dad?
So I watched my parents' marriage, which was not perfect by any means, and did not want to argue in front of my kids, which happens.
But you saw your parents argue at times?
My parents, I didn't see my parents hug. I never saw my parents kiss. My parents, I think, especially let's just at work schedules, when you're that apart that much and not seeing each other.
You don't even see them together.
You don't really see them together. So I think there was just a lack of kind of emotional connection that I saw in their marriage. I don't know that was the case when I wasn't around them. I think, how my dad was raised, and not to make excuses, but we are shaped by what we're around.
Right.
What my dad was raised, kind of maybe what he knew spiritually, and not how to overcome things, and what the power of your words, the power of prayer. I also think, and I've talked to Joel, who works for me, his dad does similar stuff, doesn't always drive, but will broker out deals. But now you have cell phones and you're sitting in your truck, you can talk to anybody, right?
Right.
One of Ethan's good friends calls another one of Ethan's good friends, and we'll talk for hours because he's on the road, talks to his wife for hours. My dad, he went from Vietnam, and he was 1st Infantry Division, so you were on the front lines. He was actually a Black Scarf Battalion, which is a Ranger, which we came to find out after he passed away. So he's a Ranger in Vietnam.
You didn't know that?
Didn't know any. He never talked about Vietnam. So my nephews, he has talked to a little bit about it, but we were totally out of the loop. And that's as he got older and got kind of more confused with life. So it was a confrontational house, so we'll put it that way. He was very aggressive. He liked things a specific way. I think in my point to the Vietnam and then my point to the semi-truck driving is you go through an experience like that in life and you sit in your truck and you drive. And you drive and you drive and you do not have a cell phone. You don't have ways to communicate with people. The devil works in your mind. So like I talk about Leighton's ability to visualize things and be like, I'm getting goats. Well, I can also talk about Caden's going 0 for 20, hitting and going, I suck. I will never play college baseball. Okay, what is the devil saying to these two? Flip-flop that, right? Or whatever it may be. Like you have to overcome. And I think that the time that I spent in prayer and that focus in prayer, and I think what my mother-in-law eventually taught is like your vision has to be bigger than your eyesight. Your prayer life has to be more powerful than what you see in the natural. Because there's a whole spiritual realm that we don't see. And when my prayer life takes me to a wall that I can't get any farther, you're praying in tongues over that stuff, right? And you're getting to that next level of prayer. And I think that's that plowing the field, and that's taking that next step, and that's impacting your kid. As a 15-year-old praying over your own kids, now you're impacting your kids' future, right?
No doubt.
I think my dad sat in a truck and probably had a lot of emotion run through him, and I don't know how to process my emotion towards my wife. I don't know how to process what I went through growing up, or the Vietnam stages of life, or whatever it may be. And I think that puts seeds of anger and fear and insecurity and hurt, and there was just no one he felt. I think if you're afraid to open up and talk to somebody, I know I struggle with that in my marriage. You're afraid to open up and release it. It becomes internal, and I think the problem's magnified because the devil wants to take you down with that. So we grew up. There was cussing and swearing, and he was never physical with my mom. He was physical with me a couple times, but it was what it was, right? But I think growing up in it, I didn't have a mom, and you talk about like, I want to raise my kids so that they want to desire right. And I think I had heard somebody say this, I don't know who it was, my mom did not say this, but I think about my mom when I think about this. She didn't try to build fences around us, she tried to build fences inside of us. And so, so there wasn't a boundary. Like, bless my mother-in-law's heart. My mother-in-law, they were raised a little different.
What a sick saying.
Right?
I've never heard that in my life.
Yeah, it was interesting when I heard that. And it took me 6 months to kind of like lament on that. I wrote it down in my goal, like just lament and process. But my mother-in-law, they didn't listen to secular music. They didn't watch specific things on TV. Like Dawson's Creek was a big thing not to watch, right? My mom's kind of like, whatever.
Dawson's Creek,
whatever. Well, but was kind of like, whatever. I remember listening to LL Cool J in the car, and she's like, this is inappropriate, turn it off. And I literally got Dre Chronic and put it in the CD player, right? But what it did, and especially then as my mother-in-law kind of came in and you had some of these fences, and as a teenager, you're seeing your buddies who are starting to have sex. You're seeing your buddies who are smoking weed. You're seeing your buddies who are good kids who just cuss. And I think my mother-in-law came in and helped structure those fences in a sense. And I think maybe I taught my mother-in-law some stuff on that too, subconsciously, where I remember sitting in the gym, my mother-in-law literally comes up to me. I've dated the girl for 2 months. And says, what's going to keep you from having sex with my daughter? That bold.
What?
And you have to meet my mother-in-law, but that bold, that blunt. And I literally stared at her and was like, my zipper? Like, what do you say at 16, 15? Like, it's embarrassing. And I don't even know how to respond. But she goes, what music do you listen to? And just would drill me. And I was like,
yeah.
I like the Jackson 5. I like oldies music. And she goes, well, what happens? Like, when does the new music become old music, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I think her walls softened on some of that stuff, being around me, realizing that. But I also think the fence is built on the inside where it's like, why am I listening to music? Now that I understand the confession of my mouth that she brought to me and helped me understand that, why am I speaking?
Right.
You're speaking those songs that you're singing.
Yeah.
So why am I, speaking about?
Yeah. So you're saying in your upbringing there was some fences on the outside, and
opposite. I think
the opposite.
they were on the inside. I think my mom taught us to make your own decision. Like, sex before you're married.
So
not the
inside
best.
fences.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But there wasn't openly talked about. My mother-in-law was openly, you don't
Just
listen
right
to
in your
secular
face.
music.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What a waste of time. What a waste of what you're speaking about.
Yeah.
So with our kids, it's a balance of both. And I think trying to find that.
Man, I've never heard it phrased like that, and I think it's awesome because there's a lot of parents that they're just trying to fence their kid in,
right?
Versus teaching them like on the inside of their own heart, to learn and grow on their own convictions and how God's speaking to them, to hear from God. And, obviously there's in my mind there's like biblical like it's a clear external boundary,
right?
But there's plenty of things. It's like it's okay for this person to do, but not this person, and like Kaylee and I, we try to live that way in that we want to know our conviction. There's so we're pastors in ministry. This is our life. There are other pastors that we see that seem to feel free to do certain things,
right.
Or to not do certain things. And we feel like, man, God's called us to not do that, or he's called us to do some things that other people aren't doing, And so I think it's super important. And even raising your kids, like, listen, we got to hear from God and how we should live our lives, and not put our convictions on everybody else.
Right.
But still not also loosen up on our convictions just because they're like it's pressure. Or we feel like, oh, they're doing it, I can do. Like, it's not everybody's equal in that. We have a specific calling and a specific plan, all that. So,
when are you raising your kids by pushing your relationship with God on them, or are they learning their own relationship with God? And I think that's the fence side of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think my mother-in-law, as well as my mom, both taught us how to have our own relationship with God. And I think the small private school we went to, there was a lot of parents who we do this because we do this, right?
Yeah.
Not we do this because here's the consequences or results or actions or influence or impact, right? Like, I don't drink, number one, because I have a super OC personality, so it probably would not be good. But I also, if I'm sitting having an alcoholic beverage and my kid's looking at me who's 13, 14, 15, how do I teach them a boundary even though I know a boundary, right?
Yeah.
How do I sit, if I'm in youth ministry, let's say, and I'm having a beer at the bar and I have an inner city kid, who I've been impacting his life, and his older brother comes in, he's like, oh, bro, I saw Bryce at the bar.
Yeah.
Like, that impacts, I don't care what you say, that impacts that person, right?
Yeah.
And I think, being mindful of that, and especially with our children, and trying to teach the kids to have their own relationship with God and their own understanding of how he impacted. And I had my daughter one time say, how do you know it's real? How do you know he's real? Right?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't.
Yeah.
And she looked at me like, are you crazy? Like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, all you've taught us is that he died on the cross. He saved me from sin. I can be healed. I can be prosperous. All these things. And I said, all I can tell you are these, I went through, here's 10, 15 experiences in my life, from my finances to my marriage to, my parents, to my mother-in-law coming to my life, Clark coming into my life. That's how the Lord's in my life. That's how I know that though I prayed this thing and it took 15 years to happen, 5 years to happen, 5 months to happen, I saw the hand of God in it. Yeah. And I know different decisions that I made where I felt at the time, just kind of felt impressed to go that direction, were 100% the Holy Spirit. Like, I picked up and left to go work for Clark. That was the Holy Spirit. That was the favor of God. Like, those are only things that can be done. And especially, I think, if I'm coming out of MIT or Stanford, Harvard, and amassing, a decent sized portfolio, I still say small portfolio, but a portfolio of real estate, everybody would go, yeah, totally fine. Like, I understand. Like, he was a really smart guy. Like, no, I'm a D student with no education. Like, Clark is the most ADD guy in the world, and he's extremely successful, right? Yeah. You have to understand, like, I saw the Lord work
it's the Lord's
through
hand
those
in your
things,
life.
right?
No doubt. Here's a question, because saying you're a D student, you're dyslexic, all that, like, and even some of the freedom in how you present yourself, like, I think there would be some assumption that, and maybe not assumption, maybe I'm saying it, so I don't mean to be presumptuous, but what was the state of your heart, like, say in high school, like, were you you talk about, like, I loved going down with the kids, like, all this, like, were you just a poor student but a nice student, or were you like a bad kid, and also now in business, like, you live in a world, the whole reason we do this podcast is because you've built something that if other people your age, even if they have done it, which it's very few and far between, that have done the same thing at the same pace, the same age, they're probably not Christians. They're probably not following the Lord, yet you've done it. So one, answer the question about being in high school, like, where was your heart at? Like, were you, and then also, how have you built this business and not been like cutthroat, poor business ethic, and I'm assuming you haven't, like, ruined somebody's life, like, business wise, like, whatever.
Right.
So, like, in those two worlds, I think, that's a question I have.
High school is a struggle for me, I think, educationally, but I think I came in, again, a small private school. So I graduated with 35, 36 kids somewhere
tiny,
in there.
yeah.
So it was small. And I came in as the new kid. A buddy came with me, was there 3 days, and left. So I'm on an island.
No.
I tell my mom, get me out of the school. I hate it here. Granted, it's been 3 days.
Yeah.
And she's like, we don't quit. Like,
we're not
you're
quitting.
there at least for this year. So you're there. But I went in there was already cliques. There was already certain relationships everybody had. And so I think it built a wall in me.
Yep.
And created, in a sense, a bitterness, but a positive kind of restructuring. I think I grew up, with a dominant dad and some insecurities. I think, like I said, the 16-year-old is working out of, but, so I think I was insecure and shy and wanting people's approval probably through middle school.
Yeah.
And, started at this school and kind of got an attitude from everybody and was like, this is ridiculous. And something just kind of clicked.
Yeah.
I think the mother-in-law influence also, like, helped me understand valuing relationships. And I think the key is understanding the difference between a relationship with God and, visually portraying a relationship with God. So we had chapel, and you'd have the kids who you knew had Bacardi in their locker, up there like, praise Jesus, thank you, Lord, shout to the Lord, all the, and, I'm sitting there with my arms crossed in the back like this, and I'm sure the administration thought I was the biggest jerk in the world. And I will say, I was not nice. I was not polite. I was, if you were genuine to me, I was genuine to you. So I had a basketball coach in 9th grade, Rick Bruce. I still remember the name, but nicest guy, and connected with him. But there was a genuine connection. The pastor who married Lynette and I was my baseball coach. Genuine connection with him. 2-3, guys and 2-3 girls. Genuine connection with. Otherwise, everybody else was like at a wall, arm's length fence, like go away. And I think I rubbed people the wrong way, in all honesty. I don't think I was like the greatest example, but
in some cases, what you're saying, it's like well-deserved, like arm's length.
I mean, I think there was healthy and not healthy, right? I think I was disrespectful in a lot of ways and shouldn't have been like that. But I think it protected me in a lot of ways too. I don't know. It's hard to look back on that and know what was right or wrong.
What about in business? There's plenty of opportunity for you to cheat or to make the wrong call, cut somebody off on a deal, screw somebody over. I know enough to know that there's other people in your field and in your world that they make a ton of money and it's at other people's detriment. How have you built what you've built without being like that?
I honestly think the Lord's pushed me out of some things that I thought were great deals. That I'm going to be a part of this, and all of a sudden that owner that I would have been a part of was getting sued, or wasn't carrying himself with integrity. I honest to God, left the development company I was with because of the integrity and what was going on there. And it was, really a group of 25 to 35-year-olds that were, honestly doing cocaine, drinking. It was like a boiler room type setting, obviously not that dramatic, but, it was that type of setting. But I had a wife and kid to go home to. And I had a eventual current business partner who I own a couple buildings with, but eventually, one of the guys I worked kind of next to also had a wife and kids. You know, wasn't saved, drank, whatever, but like genuinely a good guy. Yeah. And I think having him in the office with me helped as well. Yeah. Having a mother-in-law who was, again, a huge influence in kind of her voice. Yeah. And, praying. I mean, it like everything in my life, somebody's like, how did you get there? Prayer. How did you get there? Prayer. It's like, it all came back to that time in prayer. Like, I'm willing to sacrifice time hanging out with buddies to pray.
It's insane to me, but it's insane to me because that is not the D student dyslexic, like coldest people, like the fact that
but if you have nothing else to rely on, like, let's strip everything down, right? Yeah. And you got to feed your kids, you have to go to something. Yeah. And think of that mentality of like, well, all these people are talking about certain things in high school. They seem really smart. Like, why don't I get this? Yeah. Why is math so easy for 90% and I got 2 out of 200? Yeah. Mr. I as my witness, I got 2 out of 200 on a test, right? Yeah. And how am I ever going to get to that level of finance, just the level of ease or success or whatever it may be, of comfort, whatever somebody wants to call it? Yeah. Prayer. And it was goals. And I think, I don't know whether my mother-in-law saw it or not. I mean, they said I was in 8th grade, I was in special ed reading and that I was dyslexic and went to, and my parents didn't really do anything. You went to the new school and you were thrown in all the regular classes. So it wasn't really until the last few years that my son's been dealing with it and we diagnosed it that we were like, holy crap, you've dealt with this for a long time. No wonder
we didn't know,
you can't read. You're, reading a book and having to reread pages. Like, So I think out of understanding, I'm a self-analyzer of what I lacked. Yep. You understand where you have to compensate. And we were joking about, we won't go into the story, but some people will compensate with their arrogance financially because whatever it may be, they have to prove that to someone. That's not me. I needed to prove to myself. And honestly, I needed to prove to myself, my wife, my mother-in-law, my buddy in Florida, and my parents that I could accomplish something.
You could do it. Yeah.
Right. And that was my influence. And those were the people I wanted to prove something to. Yeah. And I think in a negative way and in a positive way to my dad. Like, you wanted me to be a postal worker. You wanted me to go get a pension. You said this would be just a good blue collar position for me. Nothing wrong with that in anyone's life. Right. I don't judge that. It just wasn't me. And there was, my mother-in-law had this mentality that she instilled in me that you need to impact people. And through finances, churches are built. And through finance, people are reached in other countries. Yes. And so for you to make money, it is about providing for your family. Right. Go drive a Range Rover, go have a Porsche, go live in your beautiful home, whatever you want, right? But do they control you or do you control them? Are you identified by your finances or are you identified by your impact, right? Yeah. And can your finances create impact? Yeah. And that's the key. And I think being able to recognize my faults or my lacks, especially like being around Clark Gasson, he is a genius. Yeah. He is an absolute genius, and how he thinks is so out of the box, and he sees things so different in front of other people. Yeah. I didn't have that. I don't have that, and that's fine. That's not me. Yeah. But I have prayer, and so I knew getting into prayer and diving into my goal book and having a vision bigger than my eyesight. And so when times financially weren't there, when I left Clark's company, I had given him a resignation paper. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do. I mean, I essentially assisted in running his company.
Yeah, you helped him build it.
Like, I helped him, and I was the runt, right? Like, I was not the brains behind this company. Right. He is the brains behind the company. He brought all of it in, but I was the foundation that he could just pound things to, and it was going to get done, and I was going to lay down for him. Like, I loved it. Yep. And when I left, out of honestly, like, just the prompting of the Holy Spirit and in conversation with my wife, was, we got to go. And my wife's question was, at the time I was probably making, I'm 25, 26 years old, probably making $160,000 a year, which was such a blessing, and never thought, I thought it would happen, but naturally never thought it would happen, if that makes sense. And I think my salary was $89,000 a year, and the rest were bonuses and commissions. And my wife's name's Linnea, and Linnea's like, look, if you quit, you don't have an education. Like, what do you do that ever produces this again? Right?
Correct.
I mean, I have no answer to that, and handed in my resignation letter. And for 2 months, I stayed and filed papers. Like, again, speaking to like treating people the right way. Is I'm not getting paid now, and I'm trying to get you to continue to set up this company the right way while I'm gone, and you can filter to the next person. Anyway, I get a phone call from two of his investors who are vacationing with their family in Mexico. They're gone 25 weeks a year. And they said, hey, company X wants to buy company Y's building, but their competitors, even though one's a Fortune 500 company, actually, and one's a tiny little company, it won't sell. So we're going to wire you $7.5 million. We're wiring $25,000 to an attorney. Go meet with the attorney. We want you to go buy the building. So go down and meet with the attorney. Met the president or vice president of TCF Bank, who lectured me 30 minutes of what an opportunity, of how they just wired $7 million to me. I could literally leave the country and be set for the rest of my life. And I went in and bought this building, tighten up the story, but went in and bought the building for $7 million. The next day sold it to the other guys for $7.25, plus made a commission on it.
So you made $250,000 plus.
So it was
6%.
It was like $366,000, something crazy like that. And we split it 3 ways, but it was interesting. I just left my salary,
just
all off the Holy Spirit, right?
Yeah.
And within a 3-month period, the Lord's like, "Oh, I got you. It's all good."
No.
So now, fast forward 6 more months, the Clark, who I had left that company, owed me $25,000, couldn't pay me.
Yeah.
Paid me in a stock certificate. It's all. The company that we built went up, had its struggles, and kind of came down. And again, now he's taken it to a totally different level. But at that time, just didn't have the finances to pay me. He gives me a stock certificate. And I think within 4 to 6 months, that certificate went from $1 to $10.75.
No.
Inevitably, I made $275,000.
No.
So it's just interesting how, God's a God of suddenlies, number one. And he doesn't ever work the way you think he's going to work.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get my first BMW by somebody handing me car keys because they felt led, right? At 16, like you don't have a clue. And it didn't happen that way. Yeah. But I was able to pay cash for my first BMW when I was, 20-some years old. So it's I don't know. It's amazing how it works. But I think it to me, it came back to, it was prayer, it was effort, and it was a vision bigger than my eyesight. Yeah. And that's all what it came down to.
You, all that stuff is amazing. You right now are like, raising up is the wrong word, but you've got 2 guys that work for you, friends of mine as well, Joel and Ethan. These guys are legends in their own right. I love both of them. But they would lay down for you just like you would do for Clark. Like, and I'm not trying to put words in their mouth, but like I've just seen like how they honor, how they hustle. But you're like raising them up in that same way. Like, what is it about you? Like, why are you doing it? Because both those guys, like, I don't think they could have like walked into any other property management company and like got a job if they applied. And I'm not trying to knock them.
No,
they'll watch this probably. So, but like you gave them a shot when nobody else maybe was giving them a shot, and now they are helping run major arms of your company, which is awesome.
Yeah. Well, Joel was out of high school, and we're just gonna say Ethan's a college dropout because we convinced him to drop out of college. So And I'll say, and I said this prior to this when we were talking about it, I said, I need them as much as they think they need me, whatever it is. I don't know what they think they need from me, but I know that I need them in the position that they're in, because it's very difficult to find businessmen with integrity, businessmen who will treat your money as if it's theirs. We do some stuff for Clark. And Clark says to Joel, or about Joel now, after 5 years of kind of working through, little things, that I wouldn't want anybody else on my stuff. Like he literally looks at my stuff as if it's his and owns that. And I think to find someone who has ownership. But Joel came to me at 18. I coached high school baseball at his school. And I needed like 3 guys to literally break 1,000 square feet of concrete out of a floor that was 6 inches deep, and then haul another 6 inches of sand out in Homer buckets out a window all summer. And Joel broke his thumbs, and they were 1099 to like just labor kids. We obviously did not have insurance with on them. And so the thought was just to bring him into the office, and we'll just continue to pay him his, I think probably $13 an hour, $15 an hour, whatever it was. In the office, and he enjoyed it. And he was going to NDSU, so he was on his way to college. That was the summer going into college. And would come to our house. Joel's Joel's a very genuine, and Joel is an arm's length guy.
Yep.
So everybody's at an arm's length, and when you get in the inner circle, you're in for life.
Yeah.
So I get my 8 p.m. phone calls. Dog, what are you up to tonight? Like, dude, I have kids. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm like just trying to wind down. Like, don't call me.
Yeah.
Or like, hey, let's go look at this car, right? And it's fun, and it's
Yeah.
and it's what he brings to the table. But he would come to our house, like hang out with our kids, kind of hang out with my wife and I, and our door was always open to any of the kids we coached. So anyway, he came one day and said, hey, I think I want to do what you do for a living. And I was like, sure, you don't want to do what I do for a living. Like now I had left Clark, and to kind of quickly go back, when I had left the development company and made that $130,000, I didn't get a paycheck for 5 more years. So there was a feast, famine, and development of all this, which goes back to prayer and goes back to forcing the vision. I mean, I remember my wife saying, holding a pitcher saying, if there's Kool-Aid in this pitcher and I pour the Kool-Aid out, it has to be refilled, right?
Yeah.
And we're not refilling the bank accounts, and crying about it. And just like, it's okay. We're, and the money we had saved, like, we didn't get a Range Rover and a Coke habit, like, not to be funny, but when we were making good money as young kids, we stuck it away. So we went and bought, unfortunately, a couple went through a divorce, and we bought a portfolio of real estate, and we bought a couple other buildings. And so we spent all of our money on the future, knowing what it was going to be in my head, in my vision, while my wife's like, okay, you just took, $1 million that we had to our name. Every dollar's gone. How are we eating tomorrow? So, I mean, like, threatening me to go get a job at Home Depot, threatening me to like, whatever. So Joel came over in towards the end of that, and, I'd love to work for you. And I said, there's no money. Like, you can't. First of all, go to college. I'll always tell you to go to college, because I didn't do it, and I didn't get to do it. And I think it's an accomplishment. I don't think it's needed by any means. I don't want to confuse that, but I think it's an accomplishment, right?
No
like
doubt.
being all conference. Like, you don't need to be all conference, but it's an accomplishment. So Joel's like, no. And I said, you got to talk to your parents. Like, this is not going well in my head. And so he's very close to his mom, talked to his mom first. I think I eventually talked to his dad, who's an entrepreneur himself. So they were open to it. And I said, look, I just can't. It's a year free. It is an entrepreneur, an internship. We ended up, essentially, I think he made $7,700, $7,300 that first year. So not enough to pay for gas, probably. So, and then the company, I'll with him, I'll say, I think my faithfulness to bring him in opened up a door, like supernaturally opened up a door for the company. And deals came. We've never marketed our company, and we managed the 700 units. Now, could we be at 4,000 units? Probably. Like, do we want to get there? Maybe. Like, that's an internal conversation we have all the time. I even like bounce that off Clark, bounce it off my wife. But I think my faithfulness to him and his faithfulness to me opened a door for both of us. Joel will run my company. Joel will make very good money. Joel will own some real estate here and eventually be in my same position. And the difference is, my expectation for Joel and my hope for Joel is that he stays with me, because there's a big picture and there's a big financial benefit to it. If that makes you kind of hook him. Where I left because some of the integrity things at the past company. Ethan, as we started growing rapidly, once kind of Joel came in, Ethan came, which was about year 2.5 of Joel, really. Ethan had come into town a few times. I could not stand his personality. Super mouthy, super sarcastic. I told him he's insecure and just needs to get out of my face. And he came back 1 year, and something shifted in him. And was more mature, which is concerning, because we all still know Ethan as a goofball, but definitely had matured and spent some good quality conversation time with him. And about 6 months after that, we had an opportunity, or needed a job, needed to bring in somebody. And I had called Ethan and said, hey, we need you. Like, this is what I'm offering you. And he's like, look, be honest with me. Would you take it? And it ended up not even being with us. It ended up circling back to be with Clark, which is interesting, and why I think that there's still a tie together. But and it was an opportunity to be a leasing agent on the U of M campus in a brand new building, an assistant leasing agent. And he goes, would you do it? And I said, no. He said, the guy's super intense. He frustrates me. He gives me anxiety, and you're not getting paid enough. And he's like dead silent, right? And I think this was his birthday. He was turning maybe 21. And he's like, all right, let me think about it and call my dad, whatever. Pretty much called his dad and is like, I'm going to Minneapolis. This is what I'm doing. His dad's like, you're a dropout. I just want you to know you're a dropout.
Yeah.
And Ethan came over, worked. The deal was he was going to work for Clark for a year and come over to me, and Clark knew that and worked there and got some experience, and then came over to us and took part of our portfolio too. So they've both been, a huge blessing to me, more than I feel like I've been to them. I feel like, when I coached, the same thing happened, where you kind of always felt you're going to speak into these kids' lives, and you realize learning so much from the kids you coached. So they've been a big part of the company growth, and a big part of where we are going. I think there's some really exciting things kind of on the forefront here.
Yeah, so. as we wrap this up, what are some of the next things that are coming out? I mean, if you can share, or like the next few years, what are you planning? Are you, like you mentioned, are you going to go to 4,000 units, things like that?
Yeah.
Like, is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's still on a teeter. Joel's like, yes, give me 4, 10, 15. Like, let's go
he can
around
do that when
the country.
He runs a company.
And you're, 24 years old. Yeah. So Joel's been with me 6.5 years, which is insane now.
And he's 24.
And he's 24 years old. So, Joel's, Bryce, however many years ago, with the vision up here, and that's great. It's my anxiety is in thought process is hiring the same integrity level, hiring the right, we brought Vanessa into the company who's fit perfectly, but it took me 6 months to bring her in, because I'm like, I don't know. Does it rock the boat? I don't know. What is she like? Does she carry herself with the same integrity? Is she honest over trying to grab money and trying to, influence people just to get them in the buildings? Like, I want you to be here because you want to be here. So, I think either way, like even organically, the management company will kind of grow. I think the big goal, as I believe the market's going to kind of take some adjust, it's going to move and adjust here in the next 12 months to 3 years, is to continue to acquire. If we can get buildings, so
you're positioning to buy.
And if we can get buildings that I buy, management contracts never go away, right? I have them. So a third party can always disappear. Obviously, we don't believe for that, but it can. And the stuff that we grow in house is always there. So that's the main focus. And then we're just doing some, I don't want to talk about it too much, but doing some trash stuff, believe it or not, that I think is going to be really exciting. And,
that's awesome.
No one's doing it in the Midwest. So I think we're going to hit the ground hard and running. We're just potentially.
It won't be 10th floor then. It'll be a new company.
It's called Trash Nanny. So look for Trash Nanny to explode. Just offered a gentleman by the name of Steven to come over and to kind of be the general manager for pennies, unfortunately. But I think that there's a big opportunity with it. This is Joel. The funny thing is, this is not Bryce. This is Joel traveling with his wife, spending his and his wife's money when I'm yelling at him to save it for real estate, and looking outside of the box and seeing something that we don't have in another market and going, why are we not doing this? And finally, after 12 months of him kind of subtly saying it, he finally got the courage to park down in front of me and say, spend the money, let's do this. And I promise you it'll go somewhere. And so
you're spending the money.
We're going to do it.
That's amazing. I can't wait to hear more about it.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Hey, 2 questions as we close. Favorite book of all time?
I would probably have to go Rich Dad, Poor Dad, honestly. And again, like jokingly, but the dyslexia side of things, I'm not a big reader. The Chatterbox from Stephen Furtick. Huge in terms of this, the mental warfare. There's a new Levi Lusko I'm reading. I have no clue. I just know it looks like a card on the front.
I declare war.
I declare war. I'm in that one and struggling through it in a positive way. So those 3 books. But Rich Dad, Poor Dad for real estate, the mental side of it is definitely the Stephen Furtick book. So
last question. Somebody maybe that's listening, they might be in high school or their college years, but want to do something like what you've built, build something like what you built. One piece of advice that you give them.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting a pad and a paper and getting in a closet, right? It's you have to be willing to sacrifice and grind. I mean, I think I laugh at the millennial and now post-millennial generation. I explained to Joel and Ethan that they are post-millennials, and that my wife is actually a millennial, which is concerning, but and it makes a lot of sense to me now. But you have to have the ability to sacrifice. You have to have the ability to put the effort in. And I joke about with Joel and Ethan how many photographers there are now. And I read an article about the post-millennial generation. They said, how many of you will be multimillionaires? And it was like 86, 83% said, we will. I will. And then they went back and polled that same group within that poll, obviously, and said, how many of you had a plan or explain your plan?
Yeah.
And 12% had a plan. And so I think it's understanding what scriptures to stand on is my foundation, right? Understanding how to pray that out and build my vision and then put that effort. I said that to my 16-year-old today. I said, I got your scripture for the year. And he's like, oh God, like here we go. Like, my dad. Well, I have a 15-minute drive that I just jam him with stuff, whether I'm irritating him and like trying to grab his newfound pecs or whether I'm trying to preach to him and preach to myself at the same time. But I said, it's everything I put my hand to prospers. And he's like, I just did that when I hit the other day in the cage. And I was like, every time you touch the bat, every time you touch the baseball. And I was like, you speak it with authority. Because Jake, who I worked with, played minor league ball, and I won't say what he said. We'll paraphrase it. But he said, I looked at the guy on deck. Jake's like 5'7", but Bradley Hall of Fame, Division I baseball, Mr. Baseball in Minnesota, and then played in the minor leagues. And he said, I turned back and I said, I'm effing hitting this one out. Okay, I'm not going to talk like that, but I get what you spoke it, you believed it, it developed confidence in you. Like at the end of the day, I tell my kids, like faith, I said, we all know the little kid in class who lies and who literally believes his lies, like convinced that what he said was true, but he completely lied. That's kind of faith, right? It's a very bad example of faith, but it's faith. Like if I can speak it enough, if I can believe it, if I can force that mentality, if I can believe for those goats or see myself as that major league pitcher. We videoed Caden walking out, Ethan and I, onto the field of the Texas Rangers. And so that he could watch that video over and over, so he could close his eyes and picture himself walking out there with crowds, right? You start to visualize that, you start to believe it, those things will happen in your life. Whether the baseball was something that you believed for that never happened, that taught you how to grow and believe in your faith, right?
And or it shows up in finance and economics.
Absolutely.
Same deal. Yo, it's amazing. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, good to have you.
This is awesome.
Good to be here. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, we'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. We've got new episodes releasing every single week. We'd also love to hear your questions or comments. You can comment below. You can also find us on Instagram at Exception Podcast. And I want to give a quick shout out to our producer, Tissel. My name's Kirk Graham, and we'll see you back next week.